Hello and welcome to the second season of Ruffells Ad Break. In this episode, I have a chat with Ekant Veer, Professor of Marketing at UC. We talked about how human behaviour is rarely logical, a marketer's job is to understand people, and about glorifying being busy. Also, a massive thanks to our sponsor, Pegasus Bay Wines, producer of some of New Zealand's very best wine.
Ruffells Ad Break.
How would you introduce yourself?
How would I introduce myself? Well, kia ora. I mean, I guess if I was given the opportunity in a formal setting, I would do a full pepeha and say, my whakapapa, I originally am from India, and in a couple of weeks' time, I get to go home to India for the first time in like 4 years. So
excellent.
Very excited about that. But came to New Zealand via the UK and have spent more of my life in New Zealand now. But if I was going to introduce my professional self, then I'm a marketer. That is my profession, but specifically consumer behaviourist, someone who is deeply, deeply fascinated by human behaviour. Yeah. I am someone that is naturally curious, and I want to ask and answer the questions that maybe other people aren't willing to ask and answer. So that maybe takes me into controversial spaces, takes me into spaces where may not be, no one's going to pay for this. But this is why, after trying the real world for a couple of years, I thought that was too scary and too driven by cash. And I thought, no, I really want to go and explore some of the darker side of our human behavior and things like that. And academia gives me the privilege to do that. So
the taxpayer may pay for it.
The taxpayer may pay for it. I mean, I've been in the paper enough talking about my research and commentating on research, and there are enough stuff commenters and the like who will say this person needs to be fired. My taxes shouldn't pay for this. So even the taxpayers don't agree sometimes, but that's okay because this is part of why we have academics, where we have thinkers, people who are paid to think. I remember going to a conference, this must be 10 years ago, and they were handing out hats to everyone as a bit of merch, and the one I picked up said paid to think, which is quite an arrogant statement, but it also helps me remember my privilege that some idiot out there is paying me to think about things and then hopefully disseminate that back, share the insight back.
Well, maybe I'm going to be controversial,
Please.
But there are plenty of idiots out there who are thinking that they're thinking original thoughts.
And I literally gave this talk we had about 40 or 50 PhD students from around Australasia fly into Dunedin last week, and I was asked to give a keynote on finding your voice as an academic. How do you express your ideas to the next generation? And I said, Dunning-Kruger is real for a lot of academics. You know a little, therefore you doubt yourself because you know how big this thing is, while there are a lot of very confident people who know shit all. And as a result, those loud voices who don't have that insight dominate some of the sphere. So it's really nice to balance that out sometimes with a deep thinker who might go, actually, that's not necessarily what the research or the evidence shows. It could be this, this, and this. But this is why academics don't always make great media people, because they go, well, in reality, I don't know. And that's not going to be a great soundbite.
It's not as sensational, is it?
While a consultant might come out and say, look, I conclusively can tell you this is what it is because I had one conversation with a person and that's what it is.
But the conversation shifted a lot, even in the last couple of years, since Trump especially, where information and facts and researched facts are somehow now able to be questioned in a way that you don't need to substantiate any of your argument, you just need to be louder than everyone else.
And again, this has been from a person who's deeply fascinated by humans and human behavior. This whole thing is a part of the research that I do, is like what draws someone to go and say, the experts with decades and decades of experience have said this. However, I trust this person more, and even if it doesn't logically make sense, that's where my ideology aligns, therefore I will do that. So, and without disparaging some of my colleagues in other fields, but economists are very rational in their thinking. This is the most rational thing to do, therefore, while marketers and consumer behaviorists in particular, no, consumers are idiots. We do things for all sorts of weird reasons. And sometimes we do the thing that's complete opposite. So very controversial at the moment is we've repealed the smoke-free 2025. However, when Smoke-Free 2025 was put in place, I spoke to people who had taken up tobacco smoking, not because they wanted to smoke, not because they were addicted to nicotine, they just didn't like being told what to do. And so no government's going to tell me what to do, so I'm going to start smoking. That is deeply irrational behavior. It makes no sense, but also I can see why someone would do that.
Yep.
And that sort of stuff is not factored into a lot of the thinking that comes out there. So discussing those sorts of things and ideology and how far politicism drives our behavior. And even if we want to believe, no, I'm my own person, I'm free, I do all my own things, how quickly we are subjected to the little things that shift 2%, 5% of your behavior, and that's enough to get someone over the line, like Trump, like whomever.
So, what was life? What was childhood? Have you always been inquiring? Have you always what sort of a family background did you have? Did you have brothers and sisters you were competing against? I mean, I know the story about your I think your paternal grandfather
Correct.
was illiterate and certainly was quite philanthropic in his behaviours. What is it that drives you? What was your childhood? What did that look like?
Okay, so that's a lot.
There's a lot.
That's a lot. And where do I start?
Just
and
the beginning.
How do I do this without crying? This is the thing.
Go for it.
I'm deeply connected to my whakapapa,
Yeah.
my ancestry, my roots. So my paternal grandfather, as you say, is the first person in our family to learn how to read and write. So everyone else in our family at that point was illiterate. So subsistence farmers, effectively.
Yep.
The story goes that his brothers just decided, nah, this kid's going to go to school, and they saved up every penny they could to send him to school, because you got to pay for school in rural India, and that had to be the town over. So traveling backwards and forwards. He then went to high school, ended up going to university, and used it to become a teacher, and was very progressive in his the importance of education. So he had, I think, 14 children in the end, and insisted, good number of kids. My dad is number 12 or 13, I think, so I had cousins who were in their 60s. It was really weird growing up as a teenager, it's weird. But my grandfather insisted even the women get an education, and that there was nowhere in India that would allow women to get an education.
Yeah.
They would work at home. So he's like, well, screw that. I'll negotiate with the local school that once the boys are done with their school, the girls can come in, so the girls can still do their household chores, but still get an education and things like that. So he was very progressive, and he was able to build a school back in his ancestral village. So in a couple of weeks' time, we're back in Alam, the village.
Awesome.
To go back, and we sponsor.
Is the school still there?
It's still there.
Great.
It's still there, and we established a scholarship. My family, far out, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Last time we were there, for it's called the topper, the top female student at turning 15. So that's typically 15 is the age that a lot of rural girls, drop out of school in this area because they have to help with that in the house. So.
Yep.
Here's the smallest one, we'll pay for the rest of education. Sort of
Great.
thing. So little things like that, which we can try to go back. But why I tell this story is that people take for granted their education. People take for granted the privilege of that. And in 2 generations, I'm a professor at a fucking university. It's so transformative when it's done right. And I think we forget that we go, I do high school and I go to university. You never maybe see the results of your your hard work for a generation or two. And my grandfather never did. He passed away when I was 14. So never saw that, but that's okay.
And did you know him? Did you have a personal connection with him?
Far out. We're going into more stories.
I'm just sort of trying to get a broad idea, because this stuff is the fundamentals of who you are is formed. We know in the first 1,000 days, and then after that.
So I was. I'm 44 now, just turned 44. So when I was growing up, it was the day of airmail. So before emails, we had these things called letters, kids. And before letters, when we had to send things overseas, you'd have these trifold blue airmail things, and you could write one side of A4 sort of thing and send it. So my grandfather and I used to share correspondence, and he would write to me. He was actually the person that named me. There's a story behind my name and what it means. Even in India, it's very rare, to the extent that when Facebook kind of kicked off in the mid-2000s, I got an email from a guy in Mumbai, and he's a Bollywood film producer called Ekant Veer, and he the message was, I thought I was the only one. That's how
you made it.
Exactly.
You made it.
He was like, he genuinely never knew another Ekant. We've established I'm the oldest and the most famous Ekant. He's number 2. It's becoming trendier now with the kids, but the meaning is weird. But my grandfather had a story behind it. We don't need to go into that one. Okay. But he was there for my birth,
cool.
and he named me, and so we only got to see each other maybe once or twice, once every year or every second year. It's not cheap to get from England to India, but my parents tried the best they can.
Yeah.
But growing up in England in the 80s, I call myself like a creamy mocha color. I'm not brown by any means, but I'm browner than the average white person sort of thing.
Okay.
And that's enough.
And where are you growing up in England?
So I was born in Liverpool.
Yeah.
I don't have the
You
Scouser
do
accent.
not even come close to
I
it.
still carry a knife and
And go to Blackpool for your holidays.
yeah, that's right. Tell people to calm down regularly. Still support Liverpool football team. I
right.
cannot get that out of me. But left when I was maybe a couple of years old.
Yeah.
My father, was accepted into a master's program at Cambridge, where my younger brother was born. So I'm the middle of three boys.
Yeah.
Younger brother was born in Cambridge, and then we grew up mainly in the south. So my accent's more South England.
More gentrified.
More
softer,
gentrified,
rounded
softer.
vowels.
That's right. Like
Less
a
abrasive.
professor should
Like
sound.
a professor should sound. There we go.
I cannot.
So it was written before you even accepted it. And then what was that like? Are your brothers, are they sort of like you? Are they, I suppose, as respectful of the background or of what's been passed down to you? Was there competition amongst you, healthy or otherwise? Or
No, the competition's not healthy, I don't think. Older brother and I always competed for whatever reason, and that still continues, and that's fine. Younger brother and I are close. He's in Sydney. He works in IT. I actually had a Zoom with him. He's looking to do some work here in New Zealand, and so I made some introductions for him and stuff like that. So, which is great. Older brother's a real doctor, as my mum says. He's a surgeon. PhD stands for phony doctor. That's the sort of strict Indian upbringing you have. well, MD. He's a money doctor. He's a proper doctor. He's a money doctor. It's a proper doctor.
Yeah, that's great.
But there was always competition between three boys growing up. Vying for mum and dad's love, sort of thing. We went in and out of each other's scope. So our older brother went to boarding school for most of his life. We stayed home for most of our lives. That sort of thing.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Did you have to work? Were you focused on studies? Did you have to work, have crappy little jobs and all that kind of stuff? And what was the worst? What was the worst thing, and what did you learn from it?
So I was thinking about this, what my worst job was. So no, we were very lucky. My parents, again, like my grandfather, because it's so close, very focused on our education. Felt education was the most important thing. So we never really had to work. We never were rich as a family, but we never went without. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So my parents never forced me to go to work. My wife grew up in a very different household. She had to work from the age of 13 onwards. It was kind of how it was. So I had the classic fast food job when I was in my high school years, and I used to really enjoy it. It was stinky work. I'd come home smelling of grease every night. It was Burger King. I was front of house. I was the smiley guy.
They wouldn't hire me.
They wouldn't
turn me down.
So you got to have a certain kind of charisma. You know?
Maybe that's what it was. Face for radio.
I don't know. But I mean, and I remember thinking, just feeling sticky with how much grease was on me.
Wow.
But I loved it because you got to meet people every single day. You got to interact with people every single day. The crew were great. And I used to close, so kind of start after school, 7, 8, and then close at 2, and then go to high school the next day. And only do that 2 or 3 times a week sort of thing. But I loved it. I mean, my girlfriend at the time did leave me for my boss at Burger King, which is interesting. I'm not sure if that needs to go into the podcast.
I think it will. I think it will.
They're still together. But I mean, formative experience. So it wasn't always great. But it's one of those weird things that I don't look back in disdain of fast food, and I always try to respect those people because it's a hard graft and you love it.
How did that lead to marketing?
Oh, look, I really don't know. I did okay in high school. I always got the good effort awards sort of thing. I was never the smartest kid, but I got the good effort awards. I was a bored kid a lot of the time, and so I was a disruptive kind of kid, and I would upset the teachers and stuff like that, but they would still love me, you know. Like,
charming enough to get away with it,
but still annoying enough to go, shit, that guy's pissing me off. And so I went to university having done economics and accounting, thinking I want to do economics and accounting. I want to do something businessy. And I did 1 semester of each and thought, I'm never doing that again. But I fell in love with psychology. I did 1 psychology paper, I did a politics paper, and I did a marketing paper as part of my options. And I'm like, this clicks for me. And it just made me realize that effectively what I'm doing, I'm a professional people watcher. I get to understand what makes people tick. And my first real job, going back to that one, I was in direct marketing, and my marketing manager would say 80% of our job is understanding people. If you can understand what drives people, motivates people, angers people, excites people, if you can get all that, then the actual stuff we make is super simple because you just need to dovetail those together. But if we don't understand people, then whatever creative solution we come up with, it's going to be useless. It might luckily match up. But if I know that someone is really passionate about whānau and family and connection to their roots, then we do a whole campaign about being connected to your family. It's really, really simple stuff, but it takes a long time to establish that. So that's that natural curiosity of, I always loved people watching, and this stuff just clicked. And so I just kind of fell into those marketing jobs, fell into those marketing papers, did more of them, really, really enjoyed it. And then got asked to come back. So I remember I wrote something out of my undergrad paper, just an assignment, and I got my professor at the time said, that's really good. Should we write this up for a conference? And I'm like, sure, let's write it up for a conference. And it got accepted into this conference in America. I wasn't able to go, so she ran and presented on my behalf. And University of Auckland kind of knocked on my door and said, look, if you could write that as an undergrad, then maybe you'd be pretty good as a PhD. Why don't you come and join us? And that's the end of the story, I guess.
That's it. You were in.
Yes.
You were in.
It gave me an opportunity to leave this real world chasing money. And without sounding too arrogant, it got to the point of I felt like I knew most of the answers of what I had to do, and the hardest thing was trying to squeeze all the problem solving into the 60 hours a week I was working. And I thought, I can't do this for another 45 years. I just can't do it. There has to be more. And that's when this opportunity came up, and I thought, opportunity to go and do my PhD. Let's do it.
Yeah, great. And so, if you had any, I mean, this is a ridiculous question,
Please.
by the way, but as broad or as narrow as you want to make it.
I am paid to think.
So, what's the shortcut? What's the shortcut to understanding people? What's the shortcut to finding an answer when people are so diverse and come from so many different backgrounds and the context is different and we've got different confirmation bias and all that kind of stuff?
Great.
What's the shortcut?
Does anyone know you? Like, of all the people that you know, does anyone know you?
No.
Do you know yourself?
As much as I am willing to work on.
Yeah, and then you kind of do these online tests and you're like, oh, that's actually really illuminating. I didn't know that about myself, sort of thing, even if those tests are bullshit. But you still learn more about yourself every single day. There is no shortcut to knowing people, but there are ways that we can learn more about each other, and there are more effective and efficient ways. So I switch hit methodologically. I love sitting down and chatting to people. I love just spending time in their presence, really digging down, probing what the motivations justifications are for their natural behavior. But I also really appreciate the power of large quantitative studies, going and saying, this is what at a population scale or a large sample scale we can see about our people, and here are the shifts, because those patterns, especially pattern recognition, really do illuminate. We don't really know what's going on in someone's head unless we stop and really dissect that, really probe hard. So studying behavior is a really nice proxy for that. So if I start seeing behavior shifting in a certain way, then we start to unpack as to why that might be. And this is where this word theory, which people get scared about, kind of come in. So what are the reasons why that? And we develop ideas, and those ideas is what we call theory. It's nothing that scary. And then we try to test which ones we think might be the levers. So we spotted patterns of behavior around COVID time. I was working with a couple of colleagues of mine and saw that young people, Māori people, Pacific people just weren't adopting the messaging that was being put out by central government as readily as other people were. And we did some testing. We spoke to some people. We spent some time talking to them about this. We did some surveys and things like that, got some ideas, and we presented that all to what was called the CDHB at the time, and they thanked us and they said, no, all our messaging is done centrally, but we appreciate your efforts. And then within about 2 months later, Delta hit, and Delta was the one that really affected young people. And we got a call saying, we need your help. We have missed the boat on this one. Could you help us with some of our messaging? Cool. And so that's the sort of thing where you can kind of spot something, you think something's going on, I see behavior shifting, let's find out why, now let's find solutions for it. And that's kind of where I get excited.
So do you feel an obligation to help in that space, or do you think this is good for furthering the career, or this is some marks I can get on the board? Or?
Oh, that's difficult to know. I think that obligation to help is a polite way of saying a toxic need to please. That's kind of what happens when you're the middle son, I think. Please pay attention to me in some way. No, but I think it's a case of if you spot something and you think, I think I think there's a solution here, and I would love someone who has power to implement that solution, then I have that ability, I have that privilege as an academic to speak to those things without worrying about losing my job or worrying about losing a client or worrying about upsetting anyone. Well, I upset people, that's fine, but I'm not worried about upsetting someone just because they're being challenged on something. So at the time when this was happening, I was part of a team that was leading, I was director of the team that was leading the university's engagement portfolio, trying to make the university more relevant to the real world. We thought there's a really good way of showing, here's some insight, here's some academic knowledge, here's how it can improve the world and improve our connection with the city. And as a result, because of the partnerships we built, because of those engagements, the CDHB were able to come to the party. We had vaccination clinics on campus. We vaccinated 3,000 students, I think, over 4 days. It was very much led by one of my colleagues, Ruffells. But having those conversations early and dovetailing in with the operational stuff that Ruffells was doing was amazing. And I describe it as the largest UC authorized drugging of students in its history. I'm not sure if that's the right marketing to use. People say it's definitely not the biggest drug event. I said UC authorized, UC endorsed drugging.
You'll be glad you're a senior professor.
That's right,
at this
exactly.
stage.
but that's the sort of fun way. Like we would put out messaging saying, be part of the largest endorsed drugging of students in UC's history, sort of thing. Just because we know that's the language that the students would respond to, as opposed to do the right thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Why don't you take care of your body? Shit, that students don't care about. You know what I mean? Not
absolutely.
saying all students, but many students, and we can get that from the data.
But so would you say that's one of the most positive things you've been involved with, or have there been across your career? Is there one which is the best? Is there one which is the worst? Did you get anything really wrong?
Oh yeah, no, get things wrong all the time, and it's through failure that you really grow, I think. For sure. And not, there was, I did this series on coping with failure and not saying I failed, therefore I'm a failure, sort of thing. And the wellbeing team put up a bunch of Instagram posts saying, with a quote of mine that said, I fail so often, I get pretty good at it. And it says, Professor Ekant Veer. No follow-up to say, and yet I'm still here, or yet I still win awards. No, just saying this guy's a loser. And they put this up, and I'm like, guys, you've missed out on the point of this whole corridor. Anyway, so many. I'm passionate about health promotion. The sort of area of specialty I focus on now is on marketing for social well-being. How do we use marketing to benefit society, not just profit from society? And again, that sort of thing that you don't get to do commercially too often, because the money is so tight. So, the vaccination.
Or if it's commercial connection, there's often an angle that
there's
or a skew or something that, let's just weigh it a little bit more heavily over here because that's where our revenue stream is tied to.
And even if your results show, tobacco's really bad, we shouldn't do it, and this has been sponsored by a major tobacco company, everyone's going to still think there's questions there. So having that freedom to study, to research without the burden of a client who says you have complete freedom, but I'm never going to fund you again if you don't do what I say, is a real privilege. So have there been bad? Yeah, there's definitely bad research. There's stuff that really does kind of go, wow, I've just spent all this time and it's not worked at all. But I'm working with some of my colleagues studying the effects of alcohol on people who've left the military and coping with leaving the military. And the data from there, which I can't share, but the data from there is going to help so many people who have come out of that situation, definitely within the military, definitely from in New Zealand context, but I think in a more general case, whenever someone has faced certain situations that are very challenging. One topic which if I have a chance to talk about, one of my dear friends, Mastura Raman, she was working in Ministry of Education at the time, and after the mosque shooting, she and I we'd known each other for a while, but she connected with me and said, hey, we've been given some funding to help to make the education system in New Zealand a little bit more inclusive. There are a lot of people from overseas who don't understand NCA, and I said a lot of people from New Zealand don't understand NCA, but never mind. And so she had put together these learning hubs which were driven by the local communities, by the immigrant communities, and for the immigrant community. So we'd have a Somali one, we'd have a Ethiopia and Eritrea one, we'd have one for the Filipino community, whatever else might be. And teachers from those communities would help to work with the parents and explain what's going on, blah, 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 blah.
Great.
We did the research on that, and we sent in a research assistant to interview a lot of people. We wrote the report. And the report, it's the only time I've ever got a photo of a politician hugging an academic report that I've written. So it's this beautiful photo of Jay Antonetti hugging my report and me sitting next to her, kind of laughing, going, what the fuck's going on, sort of thing. But that program's now gone national.
Cool.
Just to help to build more inclusivity into what we do, to make people feel they can understand the education system. So when I'm passionate about education, when I'm passionate about equity, that for me is, up there. I'm never going to get this published, I don't think, in an academic journal, but and so my academic bosses might be going, hey, we'd love you to publish more and stuff like that. But I think when you talk about impact from your work and making a real world difference, that for me is probably definitely up there in the last 5 years anyway.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's all, I was going to say, is it all purpose? Is it all work with purpose? Or is it, is there a balance that you have to kind of, get right because there are academic dollars and cents?
Yeah, I try to make sure everything I have has purpose. But then I'm a bit of a magpie. I don't know if I have undiagnosed ADD. My kids say I definitely do. But there's something shiny and exciting, and I'll run that way. So I'm deeply, deeply fascinated by online cultures, online communities, and digital marketing in particular. And so there's some of my digital marketing work, which is still very kind of mainstream as such, but always driven by, why is trolling happening? Why is cyberbullying happening? Why are people so enamored by something that really hurts them still? Why are people able to gather such a large following on the back of nothing, that sort of stuff. So is there dollars and cents? I haven't been put under that pressure just yet. We're very fortunate at UC in the business school that when we get external funding, we're very much supported. But I'm not like some of my colleagues in other faculties where they're like, if I don't get this Marsden fund or something like that, I have to fire 3 people. We're not in that sort of place, which is really great. That pressure's going to come. It's coming around the world, and so there might come a time where I would need to step up. But in which case, there's still plenty of dollars and cents for doing that pro-social work. The fact that we're doing this work with alcoholism and alcohol harm and veterans is, that is something that aligns with my values, and there's money to do that. So, which is great.
Yep. And the benefit downstream is massive, or
Absolutely.
potentially massive. And actually, it's not just military, is it?
No.
The learnings, that's just one
Absolutely.
cohort that you're.
And this is where, and again, I do this whenever I work with organisations, charities, whomever. I try to go up a level. This is the context, but what is the stuff driving it? What is the psychology? What is the sociology? What is the human condition that's driving what we see down here? So let's not just focus just on, this will work for military people, but like, what are the commonalities? Are these people who have experienced trauma? Are these people who've come from a very regimented lifestyle into a non-regimented lifestyle? Are these people, what are the things that could transpose into a different context? And that's the next step as well. And there definitely overlap.
How do you ensure that you do that? If you live in a theoretical world, how do you then take that from theory and research, which can take a really long period of time, and turn that into something which can affect change today, tomorrow?
Perfect. Great question. So far out, we're going back a while, 2005, David Mick gave a presidential speech at the Association of Consumer Research, basically saying that as consumer researchers, we need to do more good. And we need to be engaging with communities right from the start, not just looking at them and saying, this is what's wrong and here's what you're doing wrong. We then need to work with them to develop the research, and then we need to go back and deliver that research to them and build capacities so that it can have a transformative effect in their life. And he called it transformative consumer research. And David Mick was good enough to come and visit us for a couple of months this year. So I got to spend some time with him as well. And we've known each other for ages. And I very much like to take that approach. So work with people, understand what's going on, work with them to write up the results of this, and then take it back. There are many people who will disseminate their work into academic outlets, and that's what we are rewarded for, and I encourage it, because especially if you're a junior, get those papers out there, because that's what the university will value, and you'll get you promoted. Kind of when I became an associate professor, and when my career was kind of a little bit more certain and family's a little bit more stable and things like that, I kind of shifting more towards, I'm going to do stuff I want to do, not have to do, if that makes sense, and do more work with charities, do more work with people that maybe can't afford the sort of stuff that they might need. And it coincided nicely with the earthquakes. And so that was a nice part for me to go, well, I have this knowledge, this privilege, what am I here for? I made a conscious effort not to do any commercial work at that point, and just work with charities and not-for-profits sort of thing. And you've broken the mold.
Arguably for a charity.
I'm pretty sure I'm not getting paid for this. So this is charity work.
That's right. It's all charity. Tell me, where has it gone horribly wrong? Have you ever had a moment where you've gone, oh shit, I've really missed the boat, or I've really read it wrong, or did you have that moment? I never want to repeat that again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is going back a while. This is when I was a PhD student. I mean, I make mistakes all the time, like you said, but this one stands out for me. And when you go back 20 years and you can still remember that, and it still grounds you and say, don't make that mistake again. I was doing a project that was co-funded by the World Health Organization with the University of Auckland. We were in Fiji doing some work on understanding eating, the culture of eating, and things like that, and what would drive some people to take a healthier eating approach. And so my PhD was understanding what would encourage kids living in poverty to make healthy eating and exercise choices. And, long story short, if you don't want to read the 200 pages, it's not advertising, which was my stuff. So that's disappointing, but still got a PhD. But we were over there, and I remember one of the small tribal groups saying, when we see someone putting on weight or getting lazy, we tease them. We chase them, we call them names, and guess what? We don't have anyone who is that fat in our tribal group. And I didn't report that finding. I have a lot of trauma myself, growing up as a fat kid or being called a fat kid, and I just knew that was an awful thing to happen to those kids who are teased like that. And I look back as a researcher going, that was wrong of me. That was wrong of me to not report that thing, because that was a lived experience of that tribal group. That was a lived experience of what was happening. And my job as an academic is to report that stuff and then surround it with the caveats, to surround it with the downstream effects of this is that they have more people leaving that village and not having an affiliation with it than any other group we spoke to, blah, 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 blah. We had some groups that were lauding their size. The fatter we get, the more rich we are, therefore, blah, 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 blah. Now, we reported that because it kind of fit into the narrative we were understanding. But as a 23-year-old guy, I think I was too weak to stand up and say, we need to report this, but we need to blah, blah, blah. I just kind of hit that finding. And I still tell this story to my students, and I put my hand up and I say, I was wrong. What we do is we report what is being said to us by the people we speak to, but then we, from there, analyze it, deliver it in a way that comes with all its rights and wrongs, if that makes sense. So, yeah, there's plenty of times where I've gone, shit, I wish I'd asked that question, I wish I'd done this, but not so many are as transformative for me as that point, where it makes me go, be true to your participants.
Is that just age and wisdom?
Age and wisdom, and I think a bit of confidence.
Yeah.
As you grow up and you confidence / arrogance, I don't know, you kind of go, this is the right thing to do. But when you're 23, you're a PhD student, you're early doors in this thing, your wife and you are trying to start a family, you kind of do what you think is safe.
Yeah.
And so as a more senior person now, I sound like an elderly person, 44, not that old. But as a more senior person now, I try to protect people who want to stay true to their data, stay true to their research, and say, you still have the right to do it. And if that's the right thing to do, then let me protect you, let me surround you with the money that I may have, as little as it is, to make sure that you are true to your data. Don't feel obliged to compromise what you say. And there have been times, especially when I work with industry or when I work with government, where what we think is a cool idea gets washed down a little bit because it's going to lose us votes or because it's going to lose us money or whatever else it might be. we shouldn't have to do that as academics. We should have the right and responsibility to report the truth. And I know in that situation I didn't.
I think arguably anyone who's a specialist who has made good and has a history or a track record, a demonstrable track record of producing good work or good information, they shouldn't have to.
No.
But society.
That's right. And I think if I was a PhD student now, I'd be a lot more worried about the sort of stuff I put out there, because I'm going to straight out say the vitriol that you receive, especially when you are engaging with the media, can be quite rough if you're not confident. So I don't seek it out, but I quite enjoy it when something I put out there can get a bit controversial. My wife still hates it. She hates it when people are vying for my blood or whatever else it might be. There was one time, ages ago, you might remember there was a blog, the whale oil blog, and I made it into whale oil for some behaviour I called out and some things I'd done, and said this isn't okay. We shouldn't be a society that accepts this. And the comments were vicious. They were really vicious. And I knew my wife would look at them. So I said, we're going to pour ourselves a glass of wine each, and we're going to read them together. We're going to do this in a safe place. But this is your husband having an impact. This is not your husband going to get killed or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think when it turned out that it started to affect my kids, that's when I kind of thought, do I need to be so controversial all the time? So when people started to target my kids for some of the stuff I said, which I don't think was that controversial, then I thought, that kind of sucks, and you kind of just wind that back a little bit. You don't bait for it so much. But when the kids are young and they're always in the house, it's fine. But I remember there was a situation where I used the word Pākehā in a council meeting, and someone confronted me afterwards saying I was a racist, calling me a racist for using the word Pākehā. Reporter overheard this and wanted to write a story and said, were you offended by that? I said, I got a 14-year-old kid. That's not even the most offensive thing I've heard today. I mean, this stuff doesn't bother me. But they made a big story. That went viral. A lot of people started talking about it, whether Pākehā is a racist word or not. And my 14-year-old came home from school and said, we had to talk about you in English today. I'm like, sorry. And then social studies. I'm like, I'm sorry. And for some reason in maths as well, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on. None of them knew that I was her dad, but she just is like, I'm sick of having to talk. But when they found out, some of the kids at school were like, your dad is blah, 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 blah. And that's not fair on them.
Yeah. Oh, that's tricky though.
Yeah,
that's
tricky.
Really tricky.
Pick on me. I've got thick skin. Take it out on me. But the family, you've got to protect them as well.
Oh, man. Well, that's a kind of a low note for us to end things on. Thank you for that.
And we're not ending there. Come on.
No. just having a minute. I feel that quite deeply. I have kids, and we live in such a small place, and I'm not talking about Christchurch is tiny.
Sure.
But it's such a small country and such a small world because we're so connected, right?
Correct.
And we have access at no other time. And the people who want to make comment are bored.
Yep.
And I mean, sometimes you see comment, especially online, and you think to yourself, what is so wrong with your life that you feel it's necessary to even comment?
Yep. And like I said, one of my favourite projects that I worked on this with Maya Golf-Papash, who was a PhD student of mine a few years back. She spent 3 years of her life studying trolling behaviour. Why do people troll? What drives people to troll? And she's a huge troll herself. I'm a troll. But we talk about trolls as in mischief making and pranking, not as in cyberbullying and things like that. But when you see that going on and you see how vitriolic it can be, I say this in my digital marketing class all the time, one of the best things about the internet is that everyone has a voice, and one of the worst things about the internet is that everybody has a voice. Not everyone deserves to have a voice, in my mind, especially if they're using it to hurt people, bring other people down. And that's the only way they can feel lifted up, is by bringing others down. But also some of those voices traditionally would be drowned out very quickly, but online they feel very loud and powerful because
the anonymity.
Correct. So 20, 30 years ago, if you said, actually I think the earth is flat, and you told your three mates at the pub, they would probably go, don't be an idiot. Of course it's round, and that's the end of the conversation. Now there are whole communities around this. There are massive communities because of the size of it. Yeah. Is that going to lose you listeners if I talk about flat earthers are wrong?
Not my listeners, no. And they're not my listeners anyway. They'll decide. Let's just not talk about tinfoil hats. But There's a very close correlation between the two, actually.
Very.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. What about work-life balance then?
Sure.
Is that something that's possible to achieve? It sounds like you're saying there's not enough time in 60 hours to get it all done. I suspect that within those 60 hours that you're creating an alternate 60 hours which will never be met. You obviously have a family, you've got a wife, you've been out tramping, you were limping on the way in here.
I wasn't limping too bad, but yes.
Not quite. So with all of that in mind, how do you get the work-life balance right? Does it exist? Do you see that, 2023, I would argue that there's a huge amount of, maybe not burnout, but close to burnout in the world.
Yep.
People are exhausted.
Yep.
How do you manage that? Is that a thing that we need to worry about? What do you think?
Yeah. So let me start by saying, do as I say, not as I do. I think the people who have nailed work-life balance have really good boundaries. They know the difference between what is time to work and what is time to spend time with whānau or on themselves. And that match between themselves, their family, their work, society has to be well managed.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm all in on everything, and the thing that gives is usually me.
Your poor wife.
Yeah, my poor wife, who struggles with this. So the only way I can switch off is by going bush. And so I've just come back from a week away, and it was amazing. Just to go, you know what? I'm not that kind of doctor. No one's going to die. They know I'm away.
I'm not that kind of doctor. I'm not the favourite son.
Exactly. But going back to the toxic need to please, when someone emails, you feel the need to solve that problem straight away.
Yeah.
As opposed to, you know what? That's actually not going to... that's not going to make the world a better place. It's that part. So I have on my wall next to my computer a list of values that I hold dear to my heart, and I have to keep reminding myself almost daily that is my behaviour, is my work, are the things I'm saying and doing, are they in line with my values? And if they're not, then I shouldn't be doing them. So if overwork is not in line with my values, then I shouldn't be doing it. So this year in particular, and maybe last year as well, definitely slow down a bit more. Up until this point, I've been working every weekend, working late at night, strain on the family, strain on my wife in particular. And God bless her heart, she's a patient woman and stuck by me. We've been together for, I think we're coming up to 22 years, 23 years of marriage next year, sort of thing.
Well done.
So yeah, doing all right. Far out, not well done to me, well done to her. But I don't know about other people, but it got to March this year and I felt tired.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I shouldn't be feeling tired in March. I should be feeling tired maybe in November. But I was feeling tired in March, and I've become more and more reflective of my mental health as I got older. When I see the patterns of behaviour and going, you don't want to go down to that burnout route. I was very close after the earthquakes, and I've seen people who've gone through burnout, and I don't think I was there, but I was definitely close where I was not the person I wanted to be. Yep. And so I keep going, right, make sure you stop well before the edge of the cliff, not even close to the cliff sort of thing now. And so finding ways to do that. I think we're our own worst enemies, both on ourselves. I'm not doing well enough. I need to blah, blah, blah. I think we internalize what other people say very quickly. So even this morning, I was in a meeting and someone said, oh, it must be nice to be you if you can go and take a week off leave. And I'm like, I have 7 weeks of accumulated leave because I haven't taken leave for the last year and a half or something like that. I shouldn't feel guilty for taking a week off, but now I do. And now I won't take blah, blah, blah. These sorts of toxic things that kind of just get into our head where other people say, as opposed to the people who say, you're not looking good, you should take the day off, I'll cover your work. I would love more of those people around me, and I think we should all be those people for others. So I wrote a paper with a couple of colleagues, Ksenia and Susie, so Dr. Susanna Stevens and Dr. Ksenia Sarai. We wrote a paper on how to be good allies. And it was very much around making academia a safe place for women in particular, post-Me Too. But I think the theory stands, and so we can educate ourselves, number one, to be a good ally, so learn more. That's usually where people stop, though, and that's not enough. We can start to improve our processes, number two. How do we make sure that what we do is in support of well-being, in supporting our boundaries and things like that.
Implementing the learning.
And the last thing is we need to start destigmatizing or stigmatizing bad behavior, destigmatizing good behavior. So when we overwork, if I said, how's things at work? And you said, oh, it's busy. I'm like, yeah, it's busy for me. We've glorified being stressed.
Yeah.
That's dumb. All right, stop doing that. You should say, it's busy. Okay, what can I do to make your life easier? That's not good. No. This is societally what we've made normal.
Yeah.
No, don't. Okay. Oh, how's work? Oh, stressed. All right, let's stop then. Let's take a break. Let's do whatever. We don't do that as a society because we have gone and glorified negative, bad things. And so if we don't educate ourselves, we're in trouble. If we don't have processes in place that aren't good, and if we're glorifying bad behavior, then we're in real trouble. So you need all three, not just lots of one and a little of the other two. We normally do lots of education, got all the well-being apps and podcasts downloaded. I will listen to those next time I go for a run, but actually I'm not making time for going for a run because I've got a 9 a.m. meeting. And I'm telling everyone how busy I am and everything. I have, in the last 3-4 years in particular, started being brutally honest. When people say, so how's work? And I say, I'm loving it. I love my work right now. I pause and I think, actually today's a struggle. I'm really not doing well today. And trying to really just be open about this rather than the socially normative thing. I think the more we can do this as a wider society and have friends who can do this with us, the better we're going to be.
Heard it here. Thank you very much, Ekant. Thanks for coming along. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it, mate.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, Pod Peeps. For more info on how we work or what we can bring to your business or project, get in touch at ruffles.co.nz. See you on the next one.